The night I died, it was raining. Not the romantic kind of rain you see in dramas, where the heroine runs through the streets, crying pretty tears while a ballad plays in the background. No. This was the ugly kind. The kind where the sky spits water like it's angry, where car tires hiss against flooded roads, and where windshield wipers move frantically like panicked hands. I wasn't crying prettily either. I was gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles hurt, mascara running down my face, muttering curses under my breath. Because tonight, I was supposed to confront my boyfriend. No, my ex-boyfriend, about the fact that he'd been cheating on me. Cheating. On me. After 3 years of putting up with his late nights, his vague excuses, and his baby, you know I'm just busy at work. Turns out he was busy, all right? Busy with someone else. And the cherry on top? He wasn't just cheating with anyone. No, my ex had chosen the most cliché option possible. The pretty wide-eyed intern from his department. I should have seen it coming. All the signs were there. But like an idiot, I convinced myself he was loyal. That he was ambitious. That his late-night client dinners were real. Turns out, the only thing he was ambitious about was sneaking into someone else's bed. I pressed harder on the gas. The wipers squeaked. My phone lit up on the passenger seat with his name flashing. Do-hyun. I almost laughed. Was he calling to come up with one last excuse? Or maybe to confess? Either way, I wasn't answering. I had a speech prepared. No, a monologue. I'd rehearsed it in my head for hours. I was going to walk into his apartment, catch him red-handed, and tear him apart with words sharp enough to slice his cheap cologne bottle in half. After tonight, I muttered, glaring at the blurred red traffic light through the rain, you're going to regret ever messing with me. The light turned green. I pressed the gas again. I didn't even see the truck. All I heard was a deafening horn. Then, metal crunching. Glass shattering. My own scream. And then, when I opened my eyes again, I wasn't dead. At least, I didn't think I was. The first thing I saw was an absurdly luxurious chandelier above my head. Crystal, golden frame, the works. The kind of thing you see in hotels so fancy they don't even advertise. They just assume the rich already know them. The bed beneath me was so soft I thought I'd sunk into a cloud. My arms didn't ache. My ribs weren't broken. I was alive. Somehow. What the hell? I croaked. My voice sounded strange. Too sweet. Too high-pitched. A maid, an actual maid, dressed in black and white, rushed to my side. Young miss, you're awake. Young miss? Before I could ask anything, another voice called from the doorway. Deep. Authoritative. Yura. I turned my head, and almost passed out again. Because standing there was Han Jiziak, CEO of Han Group. A man so rich his net worth made headlines. The kind of man people bowed to in boardrooms and whispered about at parties. And he was looking right at me. With fatherly concern. Yura, he said again, stepping closer. You frightened us. You fainted during your tantrum yesterday. Are you feeling better? Tantrum? I blinked. My brain scrambled. Yura? Who the hell is Yura? I staggered to my feet, except the reflection in the gilded mirror across the room made me freeze. That wasn't me. The girl staring back had glossy brown hair cascading to her waist, porcelain skin without a single blemish, and wide doll-like eyes lined with perfect eyeliner. She wore silk pajamas that probably cost more than my rent for a year. And she looked exactly like Han Yura. I knew that face. Everyone in the company did. Han Yura, the spoiled infamous daughter of Han Jiziak, the CEO. A tabloid favorite, known for scandalous shopping sprees, bad temper, and being her father's only weakness. My jaw dropped. Oh my God. I had died. And now, I was her. The next day, I got the shock of my second life. Because as Han Yura, I was chauffeured straight into Han Group headquarters, a towering skyscraper that gleamed against the morning sun. And the very first face I saw in the lobby was my ex. Do-hyun. He was dressed neatly in his suit, holding a folder, standing with his colleagues. When he spotted me stepping out of the black luxury car, his eyes widened. Then instantly he bowed. Good morning, Miss Han. I almost burst out laughing right there on the marble floor. My cheating ex. The man who lied to me, broke my heart, and thought he was better than me. Now bowing. To me. If I hadn't been surrounded by staff and bodyguards, I might have actually cackled like a cartoon villain. Instead, I tilted my chin, waved a hand dramatically and said, good morning. His face twitched. Just slightly. I strutted into the lobby of Han Group like I owned the place. Technically, my father did. But for the moment, it felt close enough. The click of my designer heels echoed off the marble. Employees in neat suits glanced up, then quickly lowered their heads. Some bowed. Others whispered. So this is what power feels like. A week ago, I was just another overworked employee who had to count pennies for rent. Today, people were treating me like royalty. And in the middle of that lobby stood him. My ex. Do-hyen's smile was stiff, his bow shallow but forced. I could see the muscle in his jaw twitch. His eyes darted to his colleagues, as if silently screaming, please don't mess this up. I tilted my head, letting my lips curl into a smirk. Good morning, I said, mimicking the exact tone he used to brush me off whenever I called him during his busy hours. He flinched. Oh, the satisfaction. As I passed, I caught snippets of his colleagues whispering. Miss Han seems different today. She actually greeted him? Her aura's sharper somehow. Do-hyen clenched his folder like he wanted to tear it in half. Good. Let him squirm. The elevator ride was silent. Just me and two secretaries, both stealing nervous glances. I leaned against the polished wall, processing the reality of my situation. Han Yura, daughter of Han Jiziak. Known for being bratty, entitled, and generally useless. And now, me. I had no idea how or why I'd been shoved into her body, but one thing was clear. This was an opportunity. I could ruin Do-hyen's career. Crush his pride. Make him pay for every tear I cried. And the best part? He had no clue who I really was. The thought made me grin so wide the secretaries avoided eye contact. When the elevator doors opened, a man was already waiting in front of my father's office. Tall. Broad shoulders. Neatly pressed suit. Black tie perfectly straight. His expression was unreadable, like a marble statue carved into human form. He bowed slightly. Miss Han. Your father asked me to accompany you for today's schedule. His voice was calm, low, precise. No warmth, no friendliness. Just professional. I blinked. And you are? Team leader Kong Juno. Marketing division. Ah, the Kong Juno. I remembered him from company gossip. An infamous workaholic, cold as ice, feared by subordinates but respected for results. People said he'd rather die than flatter a superior. Which meant he wasn't going to treat me like a princess. Interesting. I crossed my arms. So you're my assistant? His expression didn't flicker. Temporary support. Until you recover from your fainting spell. Right. According to father, Han Yura had collapsed during a tantrum yesterday. My new cover story. Juno extended a neatly stacked folder. Today, you're scheduled to attend the weekly executive meeting. Afterward, lunch with Director Lee. Then, a review of your pending charity project proposals. I've arranged the files by priority. I blinked at the folder. Charity projects? Meetings? Han Yura actually had responsibilities? No wonder she fainted. I took the folder with a casual flick of my wrist, like I'd totally expected this. Of course. Naturally. Juno's eyes narrowed slightly. Just slightly. Almost like he'd noticed something off. The executive meeting was a battlefield of suits and jargon. I sat at the long table, pretending to skim documents, while secretly admiring the sheer chaos. Directors argued over numbers, managers tried to impress my father, and every time I so much as shifted in my chair, people stole nervous glances. And across the table sat Do-hyen. He looked paler than usual, probably from trying not to make eye contact with me. Perfect. Time for some fun. When one of the directors asked for opinions on a new campaign proposal, I leaned forward, smiling sweetly. Why don't we ask Manager Park Do-hyen? The room stilled. All eyes turned to him. His face went red, then white, then red again. Me? Yes, Miss Han. Of course. He scrambled to speak, tripping over words. Sweat beaded on his forehead. I sipped my water slowly, savoring the sight. That's right. baby. Dance for me. My father eventually cut him off with a dismissive grunt. Enough. We'll revisit this later. Do-hyun bowed, practically collapsing back into his chair. I smiled into my glass. Revenge had never tasted so refreshing. After the meeting, Juno approached me as I exited. Miss Han, he said quietly, may I ask something? I raised an eyebrow. What is it? You've changed. His tone wasn't accusing, just observing. Yesterday, you fainted after yelling at the accounting staff for misreporting your card expenses. Today you're calm, engaged, almost professional. My stomach lurched. Crap. Juno's gaze was sharp, unreadable. What happened overnight? I forced a laugh. Oh, self-reflection, personal growth, the usual. For the first time his lips twitched, almost a smile but not quite. I see. Then I'll observe with interest. And with that he turned, leaving me oddly flustered. What was that supposed to mean? By the end of the day, I was exhausted. Not from actual work, I barely understood half the reports I pretended to read, but from keeping up appearances. Still, as I sank into the leather seat of the company car, I caught a glimpse of Do-hyun exiting the building. He looked drained, shoulders slumped, eyes hollow. I smirked. Day 1, I whispered. And I'm just getting started. The next morning, I discovered 2 things. 1. Silk sheets are amazing. 2. Being rich apparently means breakfast looks like a buffet for a royal wedding. A maid wheeled in a cart stacked with pancakes, croissants, fresh fruit, smoked salmon, and, was that caviar? I used to be happy if I had instant coffee and a banana before work. Now, I had 3 forks and 2 knives, and no clue which one to use. I stabbed a strawberry with the wrong utensil and ate it anyway. Who cared? It still tasted like heaven. Miss Han, your car is ready, the maid announced. I slipped into another designer outfit. Something sleek, black, and far too stylish for someone who barely understood fashion. But it fit, and the heels clicked nicely against marble, so I called it a win. By the time I arrived at Han Group, the lobby scene repeated. Employees froze, bowed, and whispered. And there he was again. Do-hyun. My ex-boyfriend turned spineless subordinate. He spotted me from across the hall, straightened his tie nervously, and bowed. Good morning, Miss Han. This time, I stopped walking. He froze mid-bow, clearly not expecting me to actually acknowledge him. I smiled sweetly. Is that the best you can do? His head shot up. Excuse me? You call that a bow? My father signs your paycheck, Try harder. Snickers rippled through the lobby. Do-hyun's ears turned scarlet. Gritting his teeth, he bent lower, so low his tie nearly brushed the floor. Better, I said, breezing past him. I'd never felt so alive. Juno was already waiting outside the elevator, punctual to the second. Good morning, Miss Han, he said, voice neutral as always. Good morning, Assistant Kong, I replied, deliberately cheerful. His brow twitched. I am not your assistant. I'm a team leader assigned to temporary support. Semantics, I said airily, stepping into the elevator. You carry my schedule, you walk me around, you make sure I don't faint. Sounds like an assistant to me. The corner of his jaw flexed, but he didn't argue. Instead, he pressed the elevator button with that same controlled precision, as if even pushing a button had to be perfect. I couldn't resist teasing. Relax, I won't bite. He glanced at me, cool as ice. I'm not worried about that, Miss Han. I'm more concerned about how long this new personality of yours will last. I smirked. Forever if I feel like it. His gaze lingered on me for half a second longer than necessary. Then he looked away. Why did that make my stomach flip? The morning dragged through endless paperwork. Or more accurately, Juno dragged me through paperwork while I doodled in the margins of reports. He placed a stack of proposals on the desk. These are your pending charity projects. Your approval is required. I squinted at the jargon. What happens if I just stamp all of them? His eyes narrowed. Then we waste millions on impractical ventures, and your father will be displeased. Right. Can't have that. I leaned back, tapping my pen against my lips. Okay, fine. Which one do you like best? Juno blinked. That's not for me to decide. Humor me. His gaze flicked over the documents. He tapped one. This one. A scholarship fund for employees' children. Sustainable, measurable, and builds loyalty. Great. Approved. I slapped my seal onto the paper without even reading it. He stared at me. You didn't even skim the details. I grinned. Why should I? That's what I keep you around for. For the first time, his lips twitched upward, so subtle I almost missed it. Was that a smile? Before I could confirm, the office door burst open. Do-hyun stumbled in, clutching a file. Miss Han. I brought the marketing revisions you requested. I raised an eyebrow. Revisions. Juno stepped forward smoothly, blocking him halfway. Manager Park. Miss Han is in the middle of reviewing proposals. You should have scheduled an appointment. Do-hyun's jaw clenched. Clearly, he wasn't used to being shut down so coldly. But under Juno's stare he wilted. He turned back to me, forcing a smile. Miss Han, please allow me just a moment of your time. I tapped my nails against the desk. Should I? What do you think, Assistant Kong? Juno didn't even blink. Deny him. Do-hyun's face darkened. Assistant Kong. I smirked. Yes, my new assistant. Isn't he great? The look on Do-hyun's face was priceless, caught between outrage and horror. Juno didn't react, but I could feel his annoyance radiating beside me, which only made teasing him more fun. I waved dismissively. Fine. Do-hyun. Leave the file and go. I'll consider it. He set it down, bowing stiffly before storming out. I leaned back, savoring the moment. Did you see his face? I almost feel bad. Almost. Juno gave me a sidelong glance. You enjoy provoking him. Of course I do. He deserves worse. Juno didn't ask why, but his eyes lingered on me again, as if he already suspected the truth. At lunch, we sat across from Director Lee, a round man with a laugh too loud for the quiet restaurant. He poured me wine, cracked jokes, and tried too hard to flatter me. Normally, Yura would have eaten it up. But me? I was bored. Juno, however, watched everything. Every fake smile, every forced laugh. His eyes flicked to me occasionally, as if waiting to see how I'd react. So I decided to surprise him. Instead of throwing a tantrum like the old Yura, I leaned forward with a polite smile. Director Lee, I appreciate your effort, but let's be direct. What do you really want from this lunch? The man choked on his wine. What? Juno's eyes widened almost imperceptibly. I rested my chin on my hand, smirking. You're not here to chat about weather, are you? Tell me your proposal. I don't like wasting time. Silence. Then, slowly, Director Lee coughed and muttered something about a real estate investment. I let him ramble for a bit before nodding coolly. Submit it to my father. If he likes it, I'll support it. Juno's gaze was fixed on me now. Not cold. Not judgmental. Just intrigued. As we left, he finally spoke. You're not what I expected. Disappointed. I teased. His voice was low. Not exactly. And for some reason, that one little phrase made my chest tighten. That night, lying in my giant bed again, I replayed the day's events in my head. Do-hyun bowing lower than the floor. Juno almost smiling. Juno actually complimenting me. I should have been focused solely on revenge. But against my will, my thoughts kept circling back to Kong Juno. Cold. Sharp. Unreadable Kong Juno. Why did his voice echo in my head like that? I pulled the silk blanket over my face. Nope. Not happening. This is about revenge. Not romance. But my heart wasn't listening. The following week, I walked into the office with a plan. The little taste of power from making Do-hyun bow lower wasn't enough. No, I needed something bigger. Something memorable. Something that would remind my cheating ex every single day that he was beneath me now. And thanks to overhearing two secretaries gossip in the elevator yesterday, I had the perfect opportunity. Apparently, Do-hyun had been bragging about a new presentation to upper management. His big chance, he called it. He'd been telling everyone it would prove his worth and finally get him noticed. Perfect. The morning started innocently enough. Juno met me in the lobby again, punctual as always, his expression the same unreadable mask. "Good morning, Miss Han," he said. "Good morning, Assistant Kong," I chirped. His jaw ticked. "I told you. I'm not your assistant. Carry my coffee." I shoved the paper cup into his hand before he could argue. For a split second his eyes flashed, like he couldn't believe my audacity. But he still took the cup. Carefully. Professionally. As if even holding someone else's drink had to be done with precision. I smirked. Victory tasted almost as good as the caramel latte I stole back a moment later. By mid-morning, we were in the conference room with the rest of the marketing division. Do-hyun stood at the front, adjusting his tie nervously as he set up his slides. "Today, I'll be presenting a new campaign proposal," he began, his voice already shaky. Poor thing didn't know what was coming. Because last night, I'd borrowed some of the IT staff with promises of special bonuses. And together, we'd swapped out his sleek presentation with, well, let's just say it wasn't business material. The projector blinked. The first slide popped up. And instead of a glossy chart, it was a giant photo of Do-hyun himself. Sleeping at his desk. Mouth open. Drooling. Gasps erupted around the room. Someone snorted. Do-hyun's face turned bright red. Wait. That's not. He scrambled to click forward. The next slide appeared. Another photo. This time of him at karaoke, clutching a mic, eyes half shut, belting into the air like a dying walrus. Laughter exploded. Even the directors at the table were struggling to hold back chuckles. I sat back in my chair, legs crossed, sipping my latte like it was the finest wine. Revenge tastes sweet. Do-hyun clicked furiously through slide after slide. Photos of him eating messily, texting while pretending to work, even one where he was clearly flirting with the intern he'd cheated on me with. The room was in chaos. Half laughter, half horrified silence. Finally, he yanked the USB out of the laptop and stammered, I don't know what happened, this isn't mine." The director cleared his throat, struggling not to laugh. "Manager Park. I think you should come back when your files are in order." Do-hyun bowed so low his face nearly hit the carpet before fleeing the room. I thought I'd die from trying not to laugh. But when I glanced sideways, I caught Juno watching me. Not laughing. Not smirking. Just watching. His gaze was sharp, suspicious, like he knew I was behind it. Our eyes met. I quickly looked away, pretending to sip my latte. Later, in the hallway, Juno finally cornered me. "Miss Han." His tone was quiet, low. Too quiet. "Yes, Assistant Kong?" I asked, feigning innocence. He stepped closer. Not close enough to be inappropriate, but enough to make my breath hitch. "That presentation sabotage. Was that you're doing?" I widened my eyes. "What? Me? I wouldn't even know how to do that." He studied me, unreadable as ever. "You seem awfully pleased." "Maybe I just enjoy a good comedy show," I said with a shrug. His gaze lingered, then narrowed. "Be careful, Miss Han. What amuses you may not amuse others. And careless games have consequences." I froze. For a second, the room felt colder. But then he stepped back, adjusted his tie, and walked away, leaving me staring after him, heart pounding. Why did it sound like both a warning and concern? That evening, gossip buzzed through the office like electricity. "Did you see Do-hyun's slides? Hilarious. Poor guy's finished. He'll never recover from that. I wonder if Miss Han had something to do with it." She looked way too calm. I sat in the car ride home, scrolling through messages. Social media was already flooded with memes of Do-hyun's karaoke face. I should have been satisfied. I was satisfied. But Juno's words echoed in my head. Careless games have consequences. I frowned, hugging my phone to my chest. Why did I care what he thought? The next morning, Do-hyun avoided me like I was the plague. He bowed, but so quickly it looked like a twitch, before scurrying off in the opposite direction. I grinned. Perfect. Juno, however, wasn't smiling. As he handed me the day's schedule, he muttered, "I hope you enjoyed yourself." Because the directors are not amused. I blinked. What do you mean? There are already rumors circulating. Some believe you orchestrated the sabotage. Do they have proof? No. But they don't need proof to whisper. My smirk faltered. Juno's eyes met mine. You want revenge, Miss Han? I understand. But be careful. If you burn too many bridges, you'll find yourself alone. His words hung heavy between us. And for the first time since I'd woken up in this new life, I wondered if maybe, just maybe, he was right. The aftermath of Do-hyun's presentation disaster lasted longer than I expected. 4 days, the office buzzed with whispers. People tried to keep their voices low, but when you're the daughter of the CEO, and the ex of the man at the center of it all, you hear everything. Did you see Manager Park's face when those slides came up? Who even took those photos? Brutal. Honestly. I think Miss Han had something to do with it. Of course she did. Who else could humiliate him like that and get away with it? Everywhere I walked, heads turned. Some employees bowed deeper than usual, afraid of being my next target. Others looked at me with sly amusement, as if I were their personal source of entertainment. It should have felt like victory. But instead, it left a sour taste in my mouth. Father summoned me to his office 2 days later. Han Jiziak's office wasn't really an office. It was a kingdom. Floor-to-ceiling windows, a mahogany desk that could double as a dining table, and shelves of awards lined up like soldiers. He sat behind it like a king on his throne, fingers steepled. Yura. His voice was calm, but the weight of it pressed on my shoulders. Do you know what people are saying? I forced an innocent smile. People say things all the time, Father. They say you humiliated Manager Park. I froze. Do you believe that? He sighed, rubbing his temples. Whether I believe it doesn't matter. What matters is perception. Your reputation has always been volatile. And if people start thinking you're sabotaging employees, it reflects poorly on me. There it was. Not don't do it because it's wrong, but don't do it because it embarrasses me. Classic CEO parenting. I'll be more careful, I said smoothly. He studied me a moment longer, eyes sharp before nodding. Good. Don't disappoint me again. I left his office with Juno trailing behind. He didn't say anything at first, but I could feel his eyes on me, like a shadow that judged silently. Finally, in the elevator he spoke. You got off easy. I glanced at him. Excuse me. Your father warned you. If you were anyone else, you'd already be fired. I bristled. Well, lucky me. Nepotism has its perks. He didn't smile. Do you intend to keep using that as your shield forever? The word stung more than I wanted to admit. I crossed my arms, staring at the elevator doors. What I do with my life is none of your business, Assistant Kong. He didn't rise to the bait. He just murmured, almost too quietly to hear. It became my business the moment I was assigned to you. Why did that sound less like duty, and more like something else? The next day, Do-hyun made his move. He showed up at my office door with a coffee tray in his hands. Miss Han. His voice was way too cheerful. I thought you might like your favorite drink. Caramel macchiato, extra syrup. I raised an eyebrow. You know my favorite drink? He froze for a split second. Of course. I make it a point to know the preferences of the CEO's family. Liar. That was my favorite drink when I was his girlfriend. I took the cup, sniffed it, then set it aside. Thanks. Leave it on the table. His smile twitched. I also prepared a summary of yesterday's reports. If you'd like, I can walk you through them. Juno appeared from nowhere, sliding between us like a cold wall. Manager Park. Miss Han's schedule is already full. Please return to your department. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Do-hyun's jaw clenched, but he bowed stiffly. Of course, team leader Kong. As he stormed out, Juno glanced at me. You should be more careful. Careful about what? Free coffee. I smirked. Juno's gaze lingered on the untouched cup. Poison often comes in sweet packaging. I blinked. Was he joking? Or did he really suspect Do-hyun of being that petty? Either way, The protective edge in his voice made my stomach flutter in ways I refused to acknowledge. By the afternoon, the whispers had shifted. Have you noticed how often team leader Kong is with Miss Han? They're always together. Meetings, hallways, even lunch. Do you think something's going on between them? I nearly choked on my tea when I overheard that one. Me. With him. I stole a glance at Juno walking beside me, perfectly composed as always. The idea was ridiculous. He was cold, controlled, and infuriating. Not my type. Not my. My brain betrayed me with an image. His hand brushing mine when he passed me a folder yesterday. The way his eyes lingered when I surprised him with a sharp remark. I shook the thought out violently. Absolutely not. Still, the gossip spread fast. By the end of the day, even Do-hyun was glaring daggers every time he saw us walking together. And for some reason, the idea of him thinking I'd moved on, with someone taller, sharper, and infinitely better, made me grin. That evening, as I packed up, Juno finally spoke. You've heard the rumors. I shrugged. Of course. They're entertaining. He studied me, eyes unreadable. They're dangerous. Why? Afraid people will think you like me. I teased. His expression didn't change. I'm afraid people will use those rumors to hurt you. The air went still. For a moment, I forgot how to breathe. Because for the first time, his words didn't sound like a warning. They sounded like concern. Genuine, quiet concern. I forced a laugh, breaking the tension. Please. I can handle a little gossip. But as we left the building together, whispers trailing in our wake, I couldn't shake the feeling that maybe I was in deeper than I thought. If there's one thing I've learned in my short time as Han Yura, it's this. Nothing spreads faster in an office than rumors. By Monday morning, the entire building had upgraded me from spoiled CEO's daughter to CEO's daughter possibly dating the team leader. I caught snippets everywhere. She smiled at him in the lobby. I heard she asked him to walk her to her car. No way. Kong Juno doesn't smile at anyone. If he's smiling at her. It was ridiculous. Utter nonsense. Absolutely laughable. So why did my cheeks get hot every time someone mentioned it? Still, if the rumor annoyed Do-hyun, then it was free entertainment. And oh, did it annoy him. When I strolled into the office with Juno trailing behind me, Do-hyun practically choked on his coffee. He scrambled to stand, bowing so low his hair nearly brushed the desk. Good morning, Miss Han. Team leader Kong. His voice cracked. Working hard as always? I tilted my head, lips curling. Of course. Especially with my assistant keeping such a close eye on me. Juno's eyes flicked sideways at me, warning, but I ignored it. Do-hyun's smile twitched. He looked between us like a man watching his house burn down. Delicious. At lunch, I decided to test the waters. Assistant Kong, I said sweetly, come with me. His brow furrowed, but he followed without complaint. The cafeteria buzzed louder than usual when I deliberately sat at the busiest table, and then patted the seat beside me. Sit. Juno hesitated, eyes narrowing. Miss Han. That's an order. The man obeyed, sliding into the chair with the grace of someone who didn't care what the world thought. But the whispers around us grew like wildfire. She ordered him to sit next to her? Did you see the way he leaned in? Poor Manager Park. He looks like he's about to die. I didn't need to look far to find Do-hyun, sulking 2 tables away, stabbing his salad like it had personally betrayed him. I leaned closer to Juno, just enough to make the room collectively gasp. They're staring. Isn't this fun? His jaw tightened. For you, maybe. Come on, don't tell me you care what they say. I care when you're playing with fire. I blinked at the intensity in his tone. He didn't raise his voice, but the warning in it brushed against my skin like static. For once, I couldn't think of a witty reply. That afternoon, fate gave me a new form of entertainment. I was walking through the marketing floor when a group of employees suddenly hushed. One girl scrambled to minimize a window on her computer, but not before I caught a glimpse. A slideshow. Of me. Han Yura's greatest hits. Old photos of the real Yura. Partying, drinking, laughing too loudly with her friends. A video clip of her shouting at a barista. A meme comparing her to a dragon hoarding handbags. The room froze when I stepped closer. I felt heat rise in my chest. Not shame but anger. I wasn't the one who'd done these things, but it was still my face up there. Before I could speak, Juno was already moving. He walked to the girl's desk, calm and cold. "Delete it." The girl stammered. I didn't, someone just... Now. His voice was like ice. She clicked frantically, deleting the file. Juno turned his gaze on the rest of the team. "If I see anything like this again, there will be consequences." Silence. No one dared breathe. Then he turned back to me. "Miss Han, let's go." I followed numbly, my heart pounding. When the elevator doors closed, I finally found my voice. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did." I stared at him. "Why?" His eyes flicked to mine, steady and unreadable. "Because you didn't deserve it." My breath caught. For the first time, someone had defended me. Not because I was the CEO's daughter, not because it was his job, but because he believed I deserved better. And it was Juno. The man who was supposed to be cold, unshakable, untouchable. So why did my chest feel so warm? That night, I tossed and turned in bed. I told myself it was just gratitude. A fluke. A random act of decency. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw the way he'd stood in front of me, the way his voice cut through the humiliation like a blade, the way he'd said I didn't deserve it. For the first time since I woke up in this new life, revenge didn't feel like enough. I wanted something more. The next day, I decided to test him again. We were leaving a meeting when I slipped my arm through his without warning. His entire body stiffened. "What are you doing?" he hissed under his breath. "Relax," I whispered back, smiling sweetly at the room full of employees watching us. "They already think something's going on. Might as well give them a show." "Miss Han." I tilted my head, deliberately brushing closer. "What's the matter?" "Afraid they'll think you like me?" His lips parted, but no words came out. For a split second, I saw something flicker in his eyes. Something hot, something dangerous. Then it was gone, replaced by his usual icy mask. He pried my arm off gently but firmly, guiding me out of the room. The moment we were alone, he rounded on me. "Enough." I blinked. "Excuse me. This game you're playing, humiliating Manager Park, teasing me, provoking gossip, it has to stop." I crossed my arms. "Why? Are you worried about your precious reputation?" His jaw clenched. "No. I'm worried about you." The words hit me like a punch. Before I could respond, he stepped closer, his voice dropping low. "You're not the Han Yura I knew. The old Yura wouldn't care about the rumors. She wouldn't care about anyone. But you..." His eyes searched mine, sharp and unrelenting. "Who are you?" The world tilted beneath my feet. Because in that moment, I realized something terrifying. He was starting to see me. Not as Han Yura. Not as the spoiled heiress. But as me. And if I wasn't careful, he might uncover the truth. The rumors were one thing. Gossip was background noise. Annoying, but manageable. What I didn't expect was the scandal. It started on a Wednesday morning. I arrived at the office to find an unusual tension in the air. People whispered in corners, avoided my eyes, and when I entered the elevator, the crowd parted like I was carrying the plague. Something was wrong. By the time I reached my office, Juno was already waiting, a file in his hand. His expression was unreadable, but the tightness around his jaw told me this wasn't going to be good. "Read this," he said simply, handing me the folder. I opened it. And froze. Inside was a leaked budget report, supposedly signed off by me. A report riddled with suspicious numbers and an "approved" stamp. It looked like I'd authorized a shady contract that funneled money to a vendor tied to bribery. "What the hell is this?" I demanded. Juno's eyes darkened. "It was circulated this morning. Half the office has seen it. Some are saying you're involved in embezzlement." I slammed the folder shut. "That's insane. I didn't approve anything like this." "I know," Juno said calmly. "But the signature looks exactly like yours." My stomach dropped. Someone had forged it. Someone wanted me destroyed. And I had a pretty good idea who. The first confrontation came fast. Manager Park Do-hyun strolled into my office around noon, holding a printed copy of the fake report. His expression was perfectly schooled, but his eyes glittered with malicious satisfaction. "Miss Han," he said with exaggerated politeness, "I just wanted to check if these numbers are correct." I smiled sweetly, masking the fury boiling under my skin. "If you think I'd approve something this sloppy, Manager Park, then you clearly don't know me at all." His smirk faltered for just a second. "Ah, forgive me. I must have misunderstood." He bowed and left, but I caught the way he glanced at Juno before exiting, like a warning. He knew Juno was protecting me, and he didn't like it. By afternoon, whispers turned into outright suspicion. She signed off on it. I saw the stamp. CEO Han won't punish his daughter, but isn't this serious? Imagine risking your career because of nepotism. The weight of their judgment pressed on me. For the first time, revenge wasn't enough of a shield. This wasn't about embarrassing Do-hyun anymore. This was about survival. And the scary part? The old Yura might actually have been guilty of something like this. People believed it easily because it fit the reputation she'd built. But it wasn't me. Not anymore. That evening, I sat at my desk long after everyone had gone. The city lights blinked outside the window, mocking my exhaustion. I was still staring at the forged report when Juno placed a cup of tea in front of me. "Drink," he said simply. I looked up. "You don't seriously think I did this, do you?" His gaze held mine steadily. "No." The certainty in his voice startled me. "Just like that?" "No doubts. I've watched you closely, Miss Han." His voice was low, steady. "You're reckless, impulsive, sometimes cruel, but dishonest." He shook his head. "This isn't your style." My throat tightened unexpectedly. "You make me sound like a handful." "You are. And yet you're still here." His lips curved, the faintest ghost of a smile. "That's my job." Something in my chest fluttered, dangerously close to affection. I looked away quickly, gripping the tea like it might anchor me. The next morning, things exploded. A company-wide email went out. Urgent. Financial review of department approvals. Attached was the forged report, circulated officially this time. My name was highlighted. The walls of the office closed in on me. This wasn't gossip anymore. This was corporate assassination. Father summoned me within the hour. When I entered his office, he was already pacing. His face was thunderous. "Yura, explain." "I didn't do it." I snapped, louder than I intended. "It's a forgery." His eyes narrowed. "Do you think anyone will believe that? Your track record speaks otherwise. Recklessness, irresponsibility, now embezzlement? The board is already questioning me." I bit my lips so hard it almost bled. "Father, you have to believe me." Silence. Then he sighed. "For your sake, I hope you're telling the truth." "Kong Juno." Juno stepped forward. "Sir, you're responsible for cleaning this up. Prove her innocence, or both of you will face consequences." "Both of us." The words hung heavy in the air. As we left the office, I muttered bitterly, "Why drag you into this? It's my problem, not yours." Juno shot me a sharp look. "Stop underestimating how many people want to see you fall. You can't fight them alone. And you think you can protect me?" I challenged. "I don't think," he said firmly. "I know." For a moment, the conviction in his eyes made me believe it too. We spent the afternoon digging. Juno traced the vendor contracts, the approval chain, the email headers. It was like watching a detective at work. Precise, meticulous, relentless. Meanwhile, I tried not to panic every time someone walked past the office with a knowing glance. By the end of the day, we had a breakthrough. "The file wasn't created in finance," Juno said, pointing at the metadata. "It was generated from marketing's shared server." Marketing. My stomach twisted. That was Do-hyun's department. Juno leaned back, eyes narrowing. "It's him." I clenched my fists. "Park Do-hyun." Juno didn't answer, but the storm in his gaze told me everything. This wasn't over. That night, as I left the building, Do-hyun was waiting in the lobby. He smiled too politely, bowing low. "Miss Han. Long day." I held his gaze, my smile razor-sharp. Not as long as yours is about to be. For the first time, I saw a flicker of unease cross his face. And I knew. This war had only just begun. The next few days were hell. After the forged report scandal, the office atmosphere shifted. My co-workers no longer just whispered, they avoided me outright. In the cafeteria, seats beside me mysteriously remained empty. In meetings, eyes slid away from mine like I carried a contagious disease. It was funny, in a bitter way. I used to be the spoiled princess they resented but tolerated. Now I was the potential criminal no one dared to associate with. And the worst part? Do-hyun loved every second of it. He strutted around the office with that smug, nauseating confidence, like a vulture circling a wounded animal. He didn't have to say anything outright. The narrowed eyes, the pitying sighs, the pointedly polite tone whenever he spoke to me were enough to fan the flames. "Oh, Miss Han," he'd say loudly in the break room, making sure others overheard. "It must be so stressful to have people question your judgment. I do hope you're sleeping well." The way people snickered after he left told me they knew exactly what game he was playing. Juno, of course, noticed everything. He never called Do-hyun out directly, but his glares across the office were sharp enough to cut glass. Sometimes I wondered if that was the only reason Do-hyun didn't push harder, because he knew Juno was watching. Still, even Juno couldn't stop the isolation. And isolation was dangerous. One afternoon, during a team meeting, someone accidentally left my name off the attendance sheet. A small slight, but telling. When I corrected it, silence fell. The old me would have thrown a tantrum. Instead, I forced a smile and continued as if nothing happened. That smile felt like a mask cracking at the edges. When the meeting ended, I lingered, staring at the projector screen long after everyone had left. Juno's voice broke the silence. "You're slipping." I turned, defensive. "Excuse me." "You smiled," he said flatly. "But your hands were shaking." I looked down. Damn him. He noticed everything. "I'm fine," I said a little too quickly. He didn't move closer, but his presence felt overwhelming. "You don't have to be." For a moment, my throat tightened. I hated that he was the only one I could lean on. I hated that I wanted to. That night, I stayed late again, trying to bury myself in work. The office was nearly empty when the lights suddenly flickered. A voice came from the doorway. "Burning the midnight oil?" I froze. Do-hyun leaned against the doorframe, casual, smirking. The faint echo of his footsteps as he entered felt like the sound of a predator circling prey. "What do you want?" I asked coolly, refusing to look up from my papers. "Just checking in on the princess," he drawled. "You've been awfully quiet since that little report surfaced. People are starting to wonder if you've finally run out of Daddy's protection." I clenched my jaw. "Careful, Do-hyun. One day your mouth will get you fired." He chuckled. "You think I'm afraid of you?" "No, Yura. I know you. You're all bark. Without your father's shadow, you're nothing." I looked up sharply. His eyes glinted with something dangerous. Curiosity. "And lately," he continued, "I've noticed something strange. You don't act like the Han Yura I know. Less tantrums. More calculation. Almost like you're someone else entirely." My heart stuttered. He leaned closer, voice dropping. "Tell me, who are you really?" For one terrifying moment, I thought he'd seen through me. Before I could respond, the door slammed open. "Manager Park." Juno's voice was cold steel. Do-hyun straightened, mask of mock politeness snapping back into place. "Team leader Kong. I was just leaving." He shot me one last knowing glance before sauntering out, leaving behind the scent of smug satisfaction. Juno's eyes followed him until he disappeared, then flicked back to me. "Did he say something?" I hesitated. "Nothing important." Juno's gaze hardened. He didn't believe me, but he didn't press. Instead, he said quietly, "Don't let him corner you alone again." His protectiveness sent a strange warmth through me, one I quickly smothered. Because if Do-hyun was starting to suspect, I couldn't afford distractions. Not even ones with broad shoulders and an annoyingly steady gaze. The next morning, disaster escalated. The board called an emergency session. Father sat at the head of the table, expression carved from stone. The forged report was displayed on the screen for everyone to see. Yura, one director said coldly, these signatures are yours. How do you explain this? I forced myself to meet their eyes. They're forgeries. Murmurs rippled through the room. Convenient excuse. Without proof, this is damaging. Father's gaze cut to Juno. Well. Juno stood, projecting calm authority. I've been investigating. There are discrepancies in the metadata. The file was not generated under Miss Han's department credentials. It originated from the marketing server. All eyes turned toward Do-hyun. His face was a mask of innocence. With respect, Team Leader Kong, that's a bold accusation. Many people have access to our shared server. Without solid proof, pointing fingers is reckless. The board nodded reluctantly. Father's jaw tightened. Then find me solid proof. Until then, this stain remains. My fists clenched beneath the table. Do-hyun had wriggled out again. But his composure cracked, just barely, when I smiled sweetly across the table and whispered, enjoy your victory while it lasts. For the first time, I saw a flicker of unease in his eyes. That night, lying awake, I realized something. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. If I didn't fight smart, Do-hyun could ruin me completely. But I wasn't the same Yura anymore. And I had Kong Juno at my side. Which meant, Do-hyun didn't stand a chance. The office felt different the next week. It wasn't just the stairs anymore. It was the silence. A heavy, loaded silence that followed me into the elevator, down the hall, even into the bathroom. People stopped whispering behind my back because they no longer needed to. The rumor had crystallized. Yura forged the report to sabotage a rival team. And Do-hyun was feeding it, drop by poisonous drop. One morning, I entered the office to find a stack of documents dumped on my desk. A sticky note was plastered on top. Try not to mess this one up too. I clenched my jaw so hard my teeth ached. Before I could crumple the note, a low voice interrupted. Who left that? Juno stood behind me, expression unreadable but eyes sharp. I quickly shoved the note into my drawer. Does it matter? Yes, he said simply. His gaze lingered on me for a moment longer than necessary, like he wanted to say more. But then he just walked away, leaving me oddly more rattled than before. The real bomb dropped during the Friday department meeting. Do-hyun, smiling with the smugness of a man who thought he'd already won, rose to present his team's progress. Halfway through his presentation, he clicked to the next slide. And my face appeared. Well, not my face exactly. It was a screenshot of a company email account, mine, attached to the forged report. Gasps erupted around the room. This, Do-hyun said, voice smooth as silk, was sent from Miss Han's address at 2 a.m. on the night in question. Draw your own conclusions. I felt the blood drain from my face. Juno immediately stood. That's fabricated. Is it? Do-hyun arched a brow. The timestamp, the signature, the header data, it all checks out. He looked at me, eyes glinting. Care to explain, Miss Han? The room went deathly silent. For a heartbeat, panic clawed at my throat. I knew I hadn't sent that email. But how could I prove it? Then something inside me snapped. I stood, forcing my voice to remain steady. Convenient, isn't it? The exact evidence you need, dropping into your lap right when you're under suspicion. Almost like someone manufactured it. Murmurs spread. Do-hyun's smile faltered. You're suggesting. I'm stating, I cut in, that anyone desperate enough to save their own skin would frame someone else. And you, Manager Park, have been very desperate lately. The jab hit home. His jaw tightened before he masked it with a laugh. Accusations without proof are meaningless, Miss Han. Perhaps you should let the experts handle this. He sat, smug again. The meeting moved on, but the damage was done. The suspicion hanging over me had thickened into something suffocating. Afterwards, Juno caught up to me in the corridor. Don't walk alone, he said quietly. I rolled my eyes. What am I, a child? No, he said, stepping closer. His voice low enough that only I could hear. You're a target. He's escalating. And I don't like how close he's watching you. My breath caught. The way he said it, protective, almost possessive, made my chest ache in a way I hadn't expected. Why? I whispered before I could stop myself. He held my gaze. Unreadable. Because you're not the Han Yura I knew. And I want to know why. My heart stumbled. He'd said it before, but now there was heat behind it, like he was daring me to admit the truth. I forced a laugh. People change. His eyes softened for the briefest moment. Not like this. That night, I found an envelope slipped under my office door. Inside was a photo. My old body. My old life. A candid shot of me, the real me, smiling with friends outside a cafe. And scrawled on the back, in neat handwriting. Who are you really? My blood turned to ice. Do-hyun knew. Or at least, he suspected enough to play this dangerous game. I gripped the photo so tightly it crumpled in my fist. This wasn't just revenge anymore. This was war. And if I didn't move first, I'd lose everything. The photograph burned a hole in my desk drawer. I couldn't concentrate on anything else. Every time I opened the drawer, those crumpled edges mocked me. My old self, my true self, stared back at me with a smile that didn't belong in this world. It was proof. Proof that someone, no Do-hyun, was circling dangerously close to the truth. And if he dug deeper, if he connected the dots. My stomach twisted. Did something happen? Juno's voice jolted me out of my spiral. He was leaning against my doorway, arms crossed, watching me like he could peel away the layers of my thoughts. I quickly shut the drawer. Nothing. Liar, he said calmly, walking inside. He sat across from me, hands folded neatly. Your tells are obvious. You're hiding something. I forced a smile. Maybe I'm just stressed. Everyone thinks I'm a criminal, in case you haven't noticed. He didn't bite. His gaze sharpened. Yura. Who are you really? The word sent a chill down my spine. I masked it with a scoff. You sound like you've been reading too many mystery novels. But Juno didn't push. Instead, he leaned back, studying me in silence like a chess player deciding his next move. Finally, he said, if you won't tell me, then let me help in another way. Manager Park is building something. And if you keep trying to fight him alone, you'll lose. Something in his voice, steady, unwavering, broke through my defenses. For the first time since my rebirth, I whispered the truth in my heart. I didn't want to do this alone anymore. We met secretly that night in a quiet corner of a 24-hour cafe. Juno had brought his laptop. His expression grim. He pulled up a digital forensics log, scrolling through streams of code and metadata. I've been digging. That email Park presented, on the surface it checks out. But if you look deeper, he pointed at a sequence. The header data was tampered with. Someone injected your credentials after the fact. Relief rushed through me so hard my hands trembled. So you can prove it wasn't me? Yes. But here's the problem. He closed the laptop, meeting my eyes. Park won't stop with forged emails. He's going to escalate. If we only react, we'll always be one step behind. Then we stop reacting, I said, the fire inside me sparking to life again. We set the trap. The next few days were torture. Do-hyun was too quiet. He no longer taunted me in the break room or cornered me with veiled threats. Instead, he smiled politely whenever we crossed paths. That silence was more dangerous than any insult. It meant he was planning something. And I was right. On Thursday, a company-wide notice went out. Emergency board meeting, Friday. 9 a.m. attendance mandatory. My stomach dropped. Juno found me in the hall. This is it. He's going to make his move. Then we make ours, I said. The boardroom the next morning was suffocating. Executives lined the table, murmuring nervously. Father sat at the head, expression unreadable. Do-hyun stood confidently at the podium, clicking to his first slide. This company prides itself on integrity, he began smoothly. But recent events have threatened that reputation. Evidence continues to mount that Miss Han Yura has engaged in falsifying documents and manipulating internal reports for her own benefit. Gasps filled the room. I kept my face perfectly still, though my nails dug crescents into my palm beneath the table. Do-hyun clicked again. The screen filled with damning evidence. Emails, transaction logs, even a photo of me supposedly meeting with a competitor. "I submit this to the board," he said, his voice dripping with false sincerity. "For the good of the company, we must act." The directors whispered furiously. The tide was turning against me. Until Juno stood. "Permission to speak." The room quieted. Father gestured stiffly. Juno walked to the front, laptop in hand. His voice was calm, but his words carried steel. "I've been conducting a parallel investigation, and what I found paints a very different picture." He plugged his laptop into the projector. The screen lit up with streams of code, timestamps, and logs. First, the email manager Park presented last week. The metadata shows tampering. Credentials were inserted from an external source, then backdated. The origin server was not Miss Han's department. It was marketing. A ripple of shock swept the boardroom. Second, Juno clicked again. The photo presented today. Forensic analysis reveals it was composited. The shadows don't align, and pixel data shows manipulation. Gasps grew louder. Eyes turned toward Dohayan. But Juno wasn't finished. "Finally," he said, pulling up one last log, "I traced the IP address of the forgeries. All of them lead back to Manager Park's device." The room erupted. Dohayan's face drained of color, then flushed with rage. "This is a setup. He's framing me. Enough." Father's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. He rose slowly, his gaze pinning Dohayan like an insect. "Park Dohayan," Father said coldly. "You dared manipulate evidence, frame my daughter, and nearly tarnish this company's reputation. Security will escort you out immediately." Two guards entered. Dohayan sputtered, protesting, but no one listened. His eyes met mine as he was dragged out. Wild, furious, defeated. I smiled sweetly and mouthed, "Checkmate." When the meeting adjourned, I stayed behind, my knees threatening to give out from the adrenaline crash. Juno approached quietly. "You did well." I laughed shakily. "You did all the heavy lifting. I just sat there looking pretty." "You held your ground," he said, his voice softer now. "That matters." For a long moment, we stood in silence, the weight of what had just happened pressing down on us. Then I said, almost to myself, "If you knew who I really was, you wouldn't look at me the same." Juno studied me. Maybe not. Or maybe I just finally understand. My breath caught. For once, I couldn't hide behind sarcasm or bravado. The wall I'd built between us wavered. And in that fragile space, I let myself think, just for a heartbeat, what it would feel like if I told him the truth. But I wasn't ready yet. Not while my heart was still pounding from victory. Not while my past hovered like a shadow waiting to devour me. Still, when Juno walked me out of the boardroom, close enough that his shoulder brushed mine, I realized something terrifying. For the first time since waking up in this borrowed body, I didn't feel alone. The boardroom was quiet after the storm. Dohayan's furious protests had echoed down the hall, but now even that noise was gone. For the first time in weeks I could breathe. Father's judgment. Father remained at the head of the table, expression carved in stone. I waited, stomach knotted. Part of me wanted to bask in Dohayan's downfall, but another part trembled with fear. Because if Father looked at me and saw only weakness, I'd lose everything anyway. "Yura," he said finally, voice deep. I straightened in my seat. "Yes, Father." His sharp eyes studied me in silence, weighing, dissecting. 4 years, Han Seojin was a man who valued results above all else. In the old timeline, I'd always known him as distant, an untouchable mountain. Now, I met his gaze without flinching. "You disappointed me," he said bluntly. The words cut sharper than any blade. "You let rumors spiral, you made yourself a target, you allowed Park to nearly damage this company." My throat tightened, but I refused to look away. "However," his gaze softened barely but enough, "you also showed resilience, courage, and, for the first time, accountability. Perhaps my daughter is no longer a spoiled child." It wasn't praise. Not exactly. But it was more than I'd ever hoped for. "Thank you, Father," I said quietly, bowing my head. He rose. "We'll speak later. For now, You and team leader Kong will handle the transition of Manager Park's projects. Don't fail me again. With that, he left the room, his entourage trailing behind. The aftermath. The whispers began almost immediately. Directors murmured about Do-hyun's downfall, about how I had stood my ground. The same employees who had mocked me in hallways now looked at me with something closer to respect, or fear. Juno waited until the room cleared, then walked to my side. You handled him, he said simply. I exhaled a laugh. Barely. If you hadn't. You didn't crumble, he interrupted. That was enough. The way he said it, calm, assured, made heat rise in my chest. For a long moment, we just stood there in the empty boardroom, the tension between us thick enough to choke on. I broke it with a shaky laugh. Well, that was exhausting. Do you think HR has a punch card for every time I get framed? He gave me one of his rare, small smiles. If they did, you'd get a free vacation by now. A crack in the armor. Over the next week, the office slowly returned to normal, or as normal as it could with Do-hyun gone. His desk was emptied overnight, his name scrubbed from company servers. And me? I was suddenly a symbol. Some employees whispered admiration, others avoided me like I was dangerous. I didn't care. For once, I wasn't fighting to survive. But Juno was another story. Every time he passed by, every time his hand brushed mine when we exchanged documents, every time he leaned close to explain something in that low, steady voice, my heart betrayed me. I was falling. And that terrified me more than Do-hyun ever had. Because sooner or later, if I kept this up, Juno would demand to know the truth. And how could I ever tell him that the woman he was looking at wasn't Yura at all, but someone else, reborn in her body? Would he call me insane? Or worse, would he walk away? Late night confession. The decision came to me on a Thursday evening, long after most of the office had gone home. Juno was still at his desk, of course, typing with mechanical precision. I lingered by the doorway, clutching a folder I didn't need, heart hammering. Juno, I said softly. He glanced up. Walk me home. His brows lifted slightly, surprised, maybe, but he nodded. We stepped out into the cool night air, the city humming around us. I tried to find the words, but they tangled in my throat. Halfway across a quiet street, I blurted, "Do you ever feel like you're not who people think you are?" He gave me a sidelong look. All the time. People see what they want. Rarely the truth. I stopped walking. My hands trembled. What if the truth is unbelievable? Juno paused, turning to face me fully. Then you tell it anyway. And if they care about you, they'll believe. The lump in my throat nearly broke me. I almost told him everything, about the car crash, the cheating ex, the second chance I'd never asked for. The words hovered on my tongue. But in the end, fear won. Instead, I whispered, "You're the only one I trust." That was the truth I could give him for now. Juno's eyes softened, and before I could look away, he reached out and brushed his fingers lightly against mine. Then that's enough. Epilogue of a war. The next Monday, the company officially announced Do-hyun's dismissal for gross misconduct. My ex, my pathetic, cheating ex, now had no protector. I saw him one afternoon, carrying files across the office, his posture hunched, his pride stripped bare. When our eyes met, he flinched. I didn't say a word. Just smiled, the same way he'd once smiled at me when I discovered his betrayal. Karma was a delicious thing. A new beginning. On Friday evening, the department threw a small party at a rooftop bar. Drinks clinked, laughter filled the air, and for once, the spotlight wasn't on scandal but survival. I stood at the edge of the crowd, looking out over the city lights. Juno appeared beside me, as if he'd been waiting all along. "You don't like parties?" he asked. "I like them fine," I said. "I just don't like people asking when I'm going to get married." That earned me a rare, genuine laugh. I blinked, startled. It was the first time I'd seen him look carefree. "You know," he said after a pause, "people think I'm cold. That I don't care about anyone." I tilted my head. "Do they?" "Yes." His gaze shifted to me, steady and unwavering. "But they're wrong." My heart stuttered. Juno took a slow step closer, his voice dropping just enough that only I could hear. Because there's one person I care about very much. The rooftop noise faded. The air between us crackled. Juno, I whispered. He didn't wait for me to finish. His hand slipped into mine, firm and sure. And for the first time in both my lives, I didn't pull away. Final note. As the night wore on, laughter around us, I thought about the road ahead. I wasn't the woman I used to be. I wasn't the spoiled daughter everyone thought I was, either. I was something in between. Someone new. Someone stronger. And maybe, just maybe, I had found someone who could see me for who I truly was. Not just Yura. Not just the woman reborn. But me. And this time, I wasn't alone. Thank you so much for listening to Reborn as my ex's boss's daughter. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more original web novel dramas. And stay tuned for our next story.